Have you ever wanted to know how to become the best podcast host? Well, I can think of a few stinkers that should be thinking about this, but I also know quite a few fantastic ones, so let's share their secrets in this video. You're in the right place. Hello, I'm Jason Sanderson from podcasttech.com, where we take the hard work out of your podcasting. Today, I want to share this message that I got from one of my clients. This is Barry from the Unlimited Success podcast, and he says, Jason, as you go through the podcast episodes, I would really appreciate it if you give me some honest feedback on how I can improve as a host. What do you think works? What do you think I'm doing enough of? What do you think I should do more of? I don't want to be a good podcast host. I want to be the best podcast host. Full stop. Period. So I figured the best way to answer this is to make a video guideline on how you can become the best podcast host, at least from my experience working with some of the best in the industry. If you have a podcast, there's only one rule you need to abide by, and that's giving a shit, which obviously Barry does, or he wouldn't have messaged something like that. You ideally want to be in that same frame of mind as Barry and questioning how you can level up when making your show. Whether that be with the equipment, the software, making sure regular releases go out on time, the team management, all of it. You have to give a shit if you ever want your show to take off. You'd be surprised how many clients that we've taken on each year who flaked out after a few episodes. I'm not naming any names here, but out of the nearly 50 shows that we've worked on over the years, only a few have kept producing content regularly. That's only a handful of shows keep at it. The regular fail rate is like 13 episodes before people quit. The majority stop making episodes simply because they didn't realise how difficult it is to make a good quality show, and they choose arse-half options and then fail because of it. When you half-arse something, how can you expect your listeners' appreciation to be anything other than a mirror of your commitment? Even though we at podcasttech.com strive to take that hard work out of your podcasting, there's still a part of this that you, the host, and only you alone can do, and that's the talky bit. We've got your production back, but you've got to do that talky bit really, really, really well. So here are 9 tips that will help you level up to becoming the best podcast host that you can possibly be. If you implement these and put some time and effort into practicing them regularly, your audience will grow and the connection they feel towards you and your valuable information will deepen, and you'll eventually reach your show's potential at the top. To the moon! Number 1, research. The name of the game is having a great conversation, and you can't do this by taking shortcuts. It's not Monopoly or Snakes and Ladders. Go to jail. Too many people do a quick Google search 10 minutes before the interview and think up questions on the fly. At best, these questions are probably semi-meaningful to your audience, but how can you expect your audience to give up their time if you don't know everything there is to know about your guest and a vague fundamental understanding of what they're going to be talking about? The research phase of an interview should be the bulk of your job that week. If you want to be the best, you have to treat it like a full-time job. Even if you have a research assistant to do the bulk of the work, you'll probably come stuck with missed opportunities where the conversation could have gone if you'd have only spent a little bit more time and got a solid grasp of the subject material and the guest's background in it. One of my clients, Rob Reed from the After On podcast, is a great example of this. He does real deep dives on some pretty prolific scientific material. While other shows can dip their toes into the subject material, Rob prides himself on you, the listener, being able to sit down at a dinner table and have a fluent conversation about the material with the actual scientists conducting the research. And that's just after listening to the show. What a huge accomplishment. Although that might be a step too far for most people, given it takes a month to produce one of those episodes, you have to admire that commitment to create the best episode possible. At least give yourself a kick in that direction by reading everything that they've published, or at bare minimum, the newest work. Yes, this takes time, but if you're a slow reader, just get the audiobook and put it on 2x speed and go for a walk. Get your steps in for that day while you're at it. Take some voice memos of chunks of information that's relevant for your audience or something. Most people feel they're too smart for this, preferring to conduct the interview on the fly, leaving the interview to chance. Don't be like that. Be humbled by your guest's knowledge. Go do a deep dive into what they're talking about.
Be a sponge and learn everything that you can in advance of the interview.
2. Find the gaps in other interviews. Watch and listen to other interviews that the guest has done. Find the common talking points and actually do the opposite of most other hosts. Don't use the same talking points. In fact, steer away in the opposite direction the best that you can. Instead, use what you find out as inspiration to formulate small pockets of valuable information that others before you have missed out upon. Find the missing juice that will quench your audience's thirst. Find the questions your guest will be so surprised about that they almost jump out of the seat in excitement as they talk about it. Find the questions that make your guests stop and think. These are the best moments by far in any conversation, and your audience will be gripped hearing these things that they've never heard of before. 3. Too many questions. Too many hosts can't wait to squeeze each and every one of their giant question stacks into a conversation. An hour can fly by when you're interviewing someone, so plan your questions wisely and stick to about 3 or 4. Having a list of about 20 questions is going to force you to try and squeeze them in, often forsaking a good quality back and forth and ruining the flow. Think about the questions more as being themes you're going to unpick and explore alongside the guest. You've done the research in number 1, so you already have a good understanding of the material. Now go explore them together. 4. Listen. Our client Jordan Harbinger tells a great story about his transitional period in his interview technique. Previously, he'd been fiddling with his phone and doing something else during an interview, and when the speaker had finished answering the question, he'd just read out the next question on the card. This is the worst way to conduct an interview. Then one time he was interviewing the infamous author of Mastery, Robert Greene. He'd gone away and done the research and read all of his books, and then instead of trying to squeeze in a bunch of questions, he was able to sit back and listen, weighing up all of that research that he'd just done against what the guest was talking about and respond and direct the conversation appropriately, mostly because he was listening intently. He'd even discard questions that he thought he was going to ask in favour of where the conversation was naturally going. This leads to perfect transitions in the content. This also led to the best ratings that he had until this point, and it became the model for how Jordan conducts interviews, even to this day. 5. Go with the flow. Your audience is going to value you being able to ditch the formula. Conversations should ebb and flow naturally, weaving between questions that pop up naturally and rolling off the back of the previous answer. Don't be afraid to just abandon what questions you've prepared in favour of where the conversation is going. Having got the research and the hard work in place, this is going to allow you to drop that safety net. I guarantee that as long as you're driving the interview to a safe place, the conversation will be far more filling for you and more gripping for your audience. 6. No one-trick ponies. You really need to make sure your guest is on track. This is your show, not theirs. Most guests appearing on podcasts are usually doing so as a media campaign promoting something, and after a few podcasts and interviews, they're going to be treading water, saying the same gambit pieces that they've used on every show. There's nothing more boring than hearing a guest doing the same motions, saying the same things that they've always said. My client Naval is the best for this, and the reason why you don't see him appear on many shows, he refuses to have the same bit of content in 2 places. On his appearance on the Joe Rogan podcast, he said, "It's a waste of time for him and the audience to have him regurgitate the same thing over and over again." Maybe you don't have to take it to that extreme, but try and steer your guest to original content by using one of Jordan Harbinger's tricks and say something like,
You've spoken at length about this in other interviews, so I'm not going to go into that here. But what I think our listeners would like to know is...
and then go into the next question. Call out that repetition and try to move the conversation to one of the gaps that you found in your research or a more interesting question that no one else has asked. If the transition does get a bit sketchy, don't worry about it because we at podcasttech.com can edit that flow to be a bit more seamless. Just be sure not to be offensive by bringing the conversation to a halt. Just give them a gentle nudge in the right direction. Remember, the interview is about them, not you. 7. This interview is not about you. And that's another important thing. Don't let your ego get in the way of a good episode. I've worked with hosts who love switching the conversation to be more about themselves when following on from a guest's answer, just as a way of trying to relate their own story to the guest's answer, then rambling for 10 minutes about how they're so similar, entwined like star-crossed lovers, trying to make a deeper connection with the guest, but losing the connection with the audience at the same time, as they've probably heard the host say that same story over and over and over and over. And man, that gets like pulling teeth. There's only so many times we can listen to a host talk about how they sold their company for $300 million before we think, dude, you're just showing off. This interview is not about you, so drop that ego and let that thought float off and go unused. Your audience will thank you for it. Well, maybe they won't thank you for it because you've not said it, but you know what I mean. Which leads to another important thing. 8. Charisma. Are you worth listening to at all? Are you a good conversationalist in real life? Getting in front of a microphone only amplifies that ability or inability. I remember one of the most embarrassing moments when I was at school, around 14-ish, when I begged my teacher to do a show and tell video about my band. Embarrassingly, the whole class watched and spent more time laughing at me, not with me, at me, as I appeared to talk more about my cat and pick my nose more than playing drums. After a while, the teacher stopped the tape, having seen me hide my head in shame. I really had nothing to say and zero charisma, so why I push for showing a videotape of me, I don't know. But that's a common thing. Everybody wants the microphone until they're given it, soon realizing there's no coherent words coming out, and this isn't quite what they thought it would be. Every man thinks he can do three things: win in a fight, pull a girl, make a ton of money, usually managing neither. Think about how many singers get turned away from pop idol auditions. Absolute droves of people whose usual singing experience is resigned to the shower. I see failing podcasts the same way, with the host's inability to converse. Thousands of people show up every day, only a few people make it through. It's simple. Only charismatic people should be making podcasts. And if you're not, go away and work on that first. 9. Practice. A lot of this is going to take some serious practice. Like anything, becoming the best at something is always going to be about sweating the time, paying your dues. You need to be interviewing all the time and researching even more than that. And not just interviewing, but dissecting other infamous interviewers. Find the ones you idolize. The old school ones outside of podcasting are always the best, like Larry King and Ellen and Jon Stewart, etc. Also take voice lessons from a vocal coach or even a singing coach. Your voice is a muscle. Athletes train their muscles. Why shouldn't you? Be aware of your intonation. Are you saying something the same all the time in a monotonic way? Practice varying your intonation so it sounds exciting. Say something slow to create suspense. Or say something fast to create a crescendo of immediacy. Or say nothing at all to bring more out of your guest. It all needs practicing. You'll find systems and habits along the way to smoothen this workflow, but the work needs to be done. To master this craft, you're going to have to take a page from Robert Greene's book and apply that 10,000 hour rule to it. That's why podcasting is the long game. Unlike YouTube, which is a very immediate gratification and very reactionary, a podcast has to build slowly, developing as all these tips take a hold and how you conduct your show. I guarantee if you do this right, at the end of a call, your guest will be saying something like, "That was a really good interview." And if that's coming from some top dog like Mark Cuban or Neil deGrasse Tyson or Matthew McConaughey or Moby or some major celebrity who's been interviewed every day, all day, you'll know then that you're on the right path. Please like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this episode. Have you liked and subscribed yet? If not, you're not a very good mate, are you? Pass on the word and share it with a podcasting buddy, and hopefully we can help out their show. I've been Jason Sanderson from podcasttech.com. What have been your podcasting challenges this week?